So I was studying this passage last week because of the ICNA convention, 153 to 163, these 11 ayat, and I thought I knew these ayat, but when I started going through them again, I was like, whoa, there's stuff here that I never even thought about before. And so I figured I'd share some of that stuff with you guys today, inshallah. Allah Azza wa Jal says, Ya ayyuha alladhina amanu sta'inu bis sabri was salah, inna Allaha ma'as sabri. Very famous ayat of the Quran. Those of you who believe, seek aid using patience and prayer. That's a strange phrase on its own. Seek aid using patience and prayer. Certainly Allah is with those who are patient. First thing I want to share with you guys is this is actually the beginning of a continuous passage in Baqarah that keeps on going, addressing the Muslim community. And the primary addressees before this were actually the Israelites. So this is actually, it marks a shift in the surah where now the Muslims are being spoken to. This is important to note because when the passage to the Israelites began, Allah actually at the end of that intro told them, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ, seek aid with patience and prayer. This phrase is not the first time it's occurring in Surah Al-Baqarah, it's the second time. That's important to note because now they were given this charge to seek help with patience and prayer, and then a list of their errors or mistakes were highlighted and counted, and now the Muslims turn and they're being given the same exact opening advice that they were given. In other words, now it's your turn, let's see how you do. That's the first thing to note here. The second thing about the context of this ayah, and this entire surah really, is that the Muslims are under a lot of pressure. There's a growing class of rabbinical scholars of the Jewish community living in Medina that are constantly criticizing the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. They're making fun of the Quran, they're making all kinds of allegations about the Quran, and they're very knowledgeable people, and the Muslims by and large are not extremely knowledgeable, so some of them are getting confused by the arguments that are coming from these scholars against the religion. The other thing that's happening is we're actually under quite a bit of a threat, a growing political threat of the Quraysh coming back and attacking us, and there's kind of almost a scheming happening from within Medina, some of the elements of what we call now the hypocrites that are also conspiring against the Prophet ﷺ. So there's two things, right? There's a there's this widespread confusion against the Quran and against Islam that's spreading in Medina for a newly formed minority community, the Muslims, and there's also this danger of them being attacked. And in that climate, Allah said, you need help. So he says, وَاسْتَعِينُوا, seek help. Now, what kind of help do we need? He said, بِالصَّبْر, seek help with sabr, which is commonly translated patience. I would argue it's a lot more than patience, but for the purpose of this brief discussion, I'll just give you a couple of things. Sabr is to be patient in times of difficulty and to deal with them in a positive way. But sabr also means to not lose focus, what you can call steadfastness. In other words, times are tough and you became somebody else? No, you actually stayed who you were. You stayed on task, you stayed focused, and you didn't get scared or intimidated and try to change your stance or not say something because, for instance, you might be intimidated to speak up when somebody says something offensive because you're too afraid they might look at you funny or make fun of you, or you might become the object of ridicule. This might happen to you. You're sitting in a university classroom and the professor's making fun of Islam or something, and you're like, I should say something. But then the thought goes through your mind, if I speak up, there are others that are going to point at me. Maybe somebody will say something mean after class. The professor himself might humiliate me, etc. And you kind of hold yourself back, right? Otherwise, you would have spoken up. This is actually a matter of sabr too, to stand tall and to be able to stay on course and do what you're going to do without intimidation, without fear. Allah says you need help using patience. Now here's the beautiful part. Allah doesn't just give us these notions. The only way you'll get help is by being someone of perseverance, of steadfastness, of patience. He gives us a practical exercise by which we can get that. So it's not just enough to say, hey, be patient. And you're like, oh, hey, I'll be patient. How do you get patience? How do you develop that inside of yourself? That's the ataf bayan here, bis-sabri was-salati. That meaning seek help by becoming patient, by developing steadfastness. That is to say, seek help by praying. So what does prayer have to do with steadfastness? The exercise of prayer in Islam, we stand in congregation. So the first thing it does is it actually reminds us that we're not alone. And it builds a kind of discipline, because the prayer is in perfect unison. The discipline and the organization of the Muslim community is a kind of steadfastness and a constancy and a strengthening itself. That's the first piece that prayer will do. It will instill in you. The second thing that prayer does is that it's a constant reminder that we stand humbly only before Allah. We bow only before Allah. We put on our head on the ground only before Allah, which means we're never going to do such things for anyone else. La takhshaw nas. فَلَا تَخْشَوْهُمْ وَخْشَوْنِي. Don't be afraid of them, be afraid of me. The prayer is a reminder that we only truly fear Allah, that we're only really concerned about making Him happy. So we don't have to make people happy, we don't have to be afraid of people, we don't have to be afraid of anybody else. We are reminded that we are only truly afraid of Allah. The other beautiful thing about seeking help that I want to wrap this up with is a couple of quick things. One of them is when you seek help, there are two kinds of help. Isti'ana is of two kinds. One, you strengthen yourself. In other words, if you're going to exercise and you're going to better your diet, etc., you're helping yourself. You're improving yourself. You're building your stamina. And there's another kind of help when somebody else comes and helps you out. Those are two kinds. One, you help yourself. Two, somebody else comes and offers you help. What is this ayah talking about? It's actually saying first you help yourselves, then Allah will help you. Now how do we know that? First you help yourself, show me that you have a spine, show me that you can actually stand consciously in prayer and use that prayer to remind yourself what it's actually about. It's not just about some random cardiovascular exercise. You're praying so that you can connect to Allah, so that you can remind yourself that you only bow before Allah. If you can develop that mentality, then Allah will help you. How do we know Allah will help you? Inna Allaha ma'as sabirin. No doubt Allah is with those that have sabr. It's one of the most beautiful conclusions of an ayah. Why? Because there were two things mentioned. Seek help with patience, that is to say, prayer. But instead of concluding the ayah, Allah is with those who pray, no doubt. He says Allah is with those who persevere, no doubt. But He told us to pray. Why isn't He with those who pray? We're learning something profound here and so concise at the same time. Not everybody who prays develops perseverance. People pray mindlessly too. People pray without realizing what kind of strength it can give them in their life too. It's this incredible treasure that's not being taken advantage of, often even by people who are engaged in it. So our prayer is one thing, and the spirit behind it, the strength that it's supposed to give us, how it's supposed to help us, is something else entirely. And Allah wants us to find that spirit of the prayer. And I pray that all of us are able to find that true spirit of prayer, that we're going to be standing in front of Allah. I know one last thing came in my head, I'll just share it with you quickly. What's the connection between this and the next ayah? وَلَا تَقُولُوا لِمَنْ يُقْتَلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتٌ. Don't say about those who were killed in Allah's path that they're dead. There are people being killed at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. Some had already been killed in Mecca. What does it have to do with patience and prayer and all of it? When you're standing in prayer, you're standing in front of Allah. Those who died are standing in front of Allah already. They're before Allah already. They're not dead. And those who died because they were Muslim, they had committed no crime except that they're Muslim, and they were killed as a result. Those are people that Allah has given a special kind of life. And so when we stand in prayer, we're actually rehearsing how we're going to be standing in front of Allah on Judgment Day with humility. And for those people, they've already gotten to meet Allah. Don't you dare call that death. That is life itself. Prayer itself is reminding me and rehearsing for me that one day I'll be standing in front of Allah. May Allah prepare us for that gathering and make every single one of our prayers truly, truly meaningful. Barakallahu li wa lakum. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.